Hello and welcome to Notes from Backstage. We're your hosts, Lydia
and Sophie, two cellists redefining how we approach classical music.
We talk about everything from mental health, music school, navigating our careers post-grad, and what it means to find your unique artistic voice.
Join us every Tuesday for a reminder that music is meant to be enjoyed and shared, and that life exists outside of the practice room.
Hello and welcome back to episode 2 of the Notes from Backstage podcast. Today we are talking about all things adaptability and what that means to us as musicians, because I think in a profession where we are so focused on perfectionism and repetition, as much as you try to do that, there will come a day on performance day where nothing is going to plan or something chaotic will happen and you have to adapt. So we thought that we would chat a little bit about that today.
I used to at least have a lot of pre-concert rituals, and I used to be very rigid about what I wouldn't like my pre-concert space to be, and I'd always be like, yeah, I need to do this before, and or it'll be really bad if this happens, and then the real world's just not like that at all. Crazy stuff happens, and I feel like it was so freeing in a way. I was just like, now I'm just like, yeah, whatever. When I'm doing a concert, sure. Yeah. But you had an absolutely crazy story you were telling me about the other day. Can you tell us about that, just to kick us off? When you had to play on
it was kind of a banger.
A different cello.
Yeah, true story. I was at Juilliard for doing a chamber music performance, and I had been having on and off for a year some technical issue with my cello. I was getting really loud buzzing sounds on specific notes on my G and C strings. Could not figure out what was happening with it. I mean, I took this cello to luthiers in my home state, in New York City, in Paris. Nobody was really able to figure out what was going on with it.
Buzzes are a nightmare.
Yeah, could not figure out what it was. And it would be all fine, and then I would hit a specific note. But of course the note would change. So it wasn't like it was the same note every time. Sometimes it was a B flat, sometimes it was an F, it was never the same thing. And it would buzz like crazy. It sounded like a machine gun going off inside my cello, but I had this thing checked for open seams multiple times. Anyways, the cello's still alive and with us today, and I love her, and we've somehow fixed it. I'm actually really not sure. She just grew out of it. I don't know. She was having terrible
tubes. Yeah,
exactly. But long story short, I was getting ready for a performance. I was literally sound checking, warming up in a classroom with my chamber ensemble mates, and the buzz started happening, and I was like, are you kidding me right now? Because we were playing Brahms Piano Quintet, which has so much low cello stuff. I was like, I think it might have been the F, the pieces in F minor, and my F on the C string was just going nuts. And I was like, I don't think I can play on this. Because sometimes you're like, okay, if the buzz happens, I can angle the instrument in such a way, or if a wolf's happening, the trick for cello is squeezing the instrument with your knees. And I was like, it's not a wolf, none of this is working. And so I had a friend, a studio mate, who was playing the same concert I was, but his group had already performed. And I texted him and I was like, hey, is there any way that I could borrow your cello? And he was like, sure. And so I got the cello, tuned it backstage, and then walked on and was like, hey, I can't let anybody know that I'm playing an instrument that I've never held before, and we're going to make it work. And I think we did. I mean, it obviously wasn't the most confident I'd ever felt playing, because how could you when you're I'm literally adapting to a different instrument? And the thing is too with cellos, I mean, we're a bit more of a standard size than say violas, because those can vary a lot in size. But even with that, I play kind of a smaller side of a full-size instrument, and his was definitely bigger. I remember trying to get over the rib of the instrument was just so much more, the shoulder of the instrument was so much more than I was anticipating, whatever. Anyways, but it worked out. And I feel for me, the lesson from that, and I think what we were talking about, was that I trusted myself to be I can adapt to this instrument, and I trust that more than I trust my own instrument right now. So in this imperfect set of circumstances, that's the one that I went with.
Yeah, because it's interesting, because obviously you can prepare as much as you want, but it really never goes to plan.
And also, how do you practice for that? How do you practice being I've done all of my rehearsals and all of my coachings up to this point on a certain instrument? You don't really get to usually text a friend and be like, hey, can I try running this in front of people on your cello just in case?
Yeah.
That's just not a thing that you get to practice.
No.
Very often. You only do it in the moment when you're this has to happen. But I mean, it happens to concerto soloists, I think is what I had in my mind, where a string pops. And if a string pops, you don't get to run off stage and cry about it. You turn to the concertmaster, you turn to the principal of your section, and you switch instruments. Like, that's the protocol.
I mean, I think I would be the person who would go off stage and change the string.
Yeah.
But I mean,
which is fair and acceptable. But I mean, you see people that, you know, there's that famous video of Ray Chen like popping an E string and just immediately turning it to the concertmaster, and then you continue on.
Wild to me. I did this concert where I had to play on 3 different cellos, like demonstrate. It was like a showcase concert, so I was like,
my eyeballs just got so big. I was like, what do you mean?
what do you mean?
What do you mean 3 different instruments?
Oh no, it was 4 in total, so it was mine, and then I was comparing like 3 old Italian instruments, and I only got to try them like 2 hours before, and I had to play the same excerpt on each of them. And
that's also so stressful, because then even for me, I'm like worried about playing the excerpt in like the different cellos, but then I'm also like, if I play out of tune one time, everybody's gonna know, because they've already heard me play.
But it was like, it's just like, I don't know, I even feel embarrassed when I'm going to like an instrument dealer to try a new cello.
Oh, same.
And they're there watching, and I'm like, I don't know where this note is on this cello. It's
or
just
when
like,
they ask you to like run a concerto that you know in your bones, but you're like, right now,
but I
need to play it for you right now.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I don't know. Do you think there are any, for this particular situation, like, you know, if something goes wrong with your instrument, like what are the skills outside of having prepared, or like just being able to play the piece really well, know it really well, that you think like one has to draw on? Like,
well, you know, I know that you just said without preparing, but I had a friend he's a phenomenal violinist, and he went to Queen Elizabeth competition, did really well in it. And when we were playing together a lot, we were in a quartet in high school, and he was starting to do some of these really big competitions. He would practice with his strings kind of out of tune. I'm not saying that he was going on with like an A flat for an A string, but if things were slipping, he wouldn't adjust them, because he was like, I want to be able to feel like even if something is going wrong, because for string instruments, they can go out of tune so easily. I mean, my cello is going haywire right now because we've been coming out of like crazy cold and now crazy hot weather, and then I took it on a plane. Like, she's feeling a little bit temperamental right now. But you don't always get to go, hi, excuse me, let me just tune up my D string really quick. Like, you just have to adapt. So I know that you said without being able to, but that to me was really mind-boggling and impressive to me when he told me that that's how he practiced.
That is really, really smart, actually. I'm thinking about something a performance psychologist said to me once when I was saying that, like, I was playing with a conductor who was just getting the tempos wrong all the time, and how I'd kind of realized that maybe it would be better to focus on how can I just like do the best at this tempo, rather than putting all my focus on like trying to move the tempo, because then that's when you start to mess up, because you're not thinking about like the music and what you're playing. You're just focusing on the fact that you're mad at the conductor, or like you're trying to push the tempo. And I feel like exactly focusing on what you can do with the situation, or what you can control, or how you can make the best out of that situation, is maybe a better place to put your focus.
Well, and I wanted to ask you, because you were saying you used to be a very maybe more ritualistic person when you were getting ready for things. Like, what was the thing that made
anxiety.
you well, but like, what was the thing that made you flip from that? Because for me, I honestly just think it was experience. Like, you have to go through a million bad things, not even necessarily bad, but you have to go through a million different types of circumstances before you can come out on the other side and be like, yeah, no, now no matter what happens to me, I'm going to be okay. Which is kind of now my attitude when I'm performing a lot. For me is like, I expect something to go wrong, but I expect and trust myself to be able to handle it. But that really just kind of comes from experience. Like, I don't know another way of practicing that than being like, I got on my stage and fell on my face a couple times.
I think you're right.
More than a couple.
Yeah. My teacher calls it like building up this bank of positive experiences for you to kind of build your confidence on. And it's also the same, like, if people are recovering from injury, you can't go back to doing that if you don't have evidence that you can play without pain. You can't just be like, it's going to be fine. It's the same with like doing concerts. If you go into it and kind of positive thinking, wish your way into a good performance.
I always I can tell my students, I'm like, are you thinking about the shift, or are you praying that you hit the shift? Like,
but like, you know, but like, if you don't have proof of that it's gone well, and your experience with playing concerts is just always like catastrophizing or like spiraling, then that's just what you're going to keep enforcing. So I feel like for me,
vicious cycle.
When I, like, to answer your question, when I was thrown into tar and I really was like not able to have any kind of remotely in terms of like classical music standards, good circumstances in which to perform. Like we'd get up at 4 every day.
That's crazy.
When we did those excerpts with the orchestra, we'd have like 3 takes max because we only had like 2 days with the orchestra.
Right.
Kate was conducting, but she's not like a
conductor.
conductor. For some context, I was 19, right? I'd not really had any recording experience, not so much concerto experience either. So I didn't know how to like lead an orchestra when there was a non-professional conductor per se.
And
I
also,
was used to
when
like
would you practice that?
Exactly. When you're younger and you're less experienced, you rely on a very experienced conductor to kind of help you through it. So I didn't have that. Also, I knew there were going to be live takes, and I just didn't really feel like I had those skills to like perform under pressure. And I remember my anxiety levels were like just through the roof because I was like going to be out there forever, and there's like no one to help me through it. You know, it would be done at like crazy times of the day. So I kind of feel like it just threw all of that out the window, kind of the need to like have good conditions. Obviously, sometimes the conditions are like awful, and in that case, you should maybe just like walk away from it. And I really wanted to ask you about that later, but like I'll try to get to my point. I feel like it just like really shook me out of it.
Like the circumstances were just so extreme that you're like, I can't use my previous experience. Almost that you're like, I have to do something new.
I just have to do it. I just have to do it, and I have to suddenly be like the professional in this situation, even though I still was like at the very beginning of my training. And then after that, I think I was just like, wow, someone's going to give me a warm-up room. Oh my god! Like, you know, I think it was a really,
they care about the sound checks.
Like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think just that was a big thing for me. And then just like crazy. You know, like you say, things kind of going quite wrong and being like, I just can't be this uptight about performing.
Yeah. Well, and I think that for me, I also am thinking about circumstances where you do get the sound check or you get the dress rehearsal and it goes horribly. And then the only thing that can come for you is being like, well, they say a bad dress rehearsal means a good performance, but that's not actually super comforting when you're in the situation itself. And so I think having a few experiences like that is what drew me to my conclusion of like, well, things can go wrong, but I trust myself to adapt to them. And that was like, had to be a big mindset shift, because if you get so hung up on like every teeny tiny little thing that's not going exactly perfectly to plan, you kind of have a horrible time of it.
Yeah, exactly. But do you have a funny example, or like any example of a bad dress rehearsal and a good performance? I have the reverse, but we can
Okay, let's get into that in a second. I think it wasn't funny because I was so stressed at the time, but the thing that's coming to mind for me is my graduation recital from Juilliard when I was doing my master's program. I had picked kind of a beast of a program. I think I had this in my mind that I was like, you know, it's my last program that I'm going to be able to do with consistent private instruction, because I knew that I wasn't going to be having, you know, regular lessons after I graduated. And so I did Poulenc Cello Sonata because I loved the piece, but had always scared me. And if anybody knows this, Sophie's looking at me with fear in her eyes.
I started learning that piece. I was like, oh my God, I had no idea it was this.
Oh, it's crazy. My teacher actually ended up letting me use it as like my technical showpiece for my jury, because she was like, nobody on the panel is going to say that that's not hard enough to show for your technical piece, because I'd put, you know, all this work into learning it. But that piece scared the crap out of me. I mean, and also for that one, I think a lot of times when we're talking about building up endurance and doing things over and over again, and sometimes doing them in those extreme settings so you can like practice performing or whatever, I didn't have any practice goes in performing it until I was doing it for my recital. Okay. So I was sitting there being like, I was less worried about the grade, because again, it was one of those things that I was like, I'm going to be able to pull off my grade that I need to graduate, but I wanted to feel happy with it. And it wasn't necessarily dress rehearsal, but the day before my recital happened to be our studio class. And we had gotten bumped into one of the dance studios at the school. And it meant that the pianos in those rooms aren't allowed to be moved around because it'll like mess up the floors for the dancers. So the piano was facing the opposite way that it should. And me being me, I was like, oh, it's fine. I can adapt. Like, it's going to be fine. Didn't really process how little I would be able to hear the piano. And I don't think I was even in the moment as I was doing this run through in studio class, like even processing that that's what was happening. But I was feeling I just felt so disoriented. I was like, I feel like I'm having an out of body wacky experience of like not being able to hear things that I want to hear. And I felt like I was missing things left and right because I was just hearing things in my head. Cried, like fully cried after the studio class. And my teacher was there too. And I was just remember being like, and I was so stressed. I mean, I was so stressed for my entire time at Juilliard, which is another thing that we can talk about. But yeah, I think at the time I was just like a bundle of nerves. And actually my parents flew in for the performance, but they had a really dear family friend who's like basically an aunt to me, also came and surprised me. And when she showed up, like I saw them in the hotel room the day before, and I like it almost made me panic more because I was like, oh my gosh, like she made the effort to like come to this and I don't even know if I can pull it off. Like I really am feeling horrible about this. And I should say too, there were like other pieces on this recital that I was also worried about. The Poulenc was like the big one in my mind, but it was a very like fresh program for me. And one of the other pieces I was playing was a modern piece, and the composer was going to be in the audience, and I was like, oh my god, like I am just so I knew there were people in the audience that were going to know what was happening, because when you're playing a recital at Juilliard, most of the people in that audience are musicians who are good. Like that's that's the setting for it. And so I think that also is because I was like, I can't really fake my way through this. Like I'm not going to be able to go out there and be like, oh no, I like missed the shift, but like nobody noticed. Like people would have noticed because my teacher is sitting right there. Like my friends and family from the school who are all musicians are sitting in the audience, you know? And so I think that was really where I had a mindset shift in that 10 minutes before going on stage, being like, something probably will go wrong and it's fine. Like I can handle it. And if something goes wrong, I'm going to be able to adapt. And you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it genuinely, I couldn't tell you what went wrong. I'm not saying that it was like the cleanest, best performance anybody's ever given of the Poulenc cello sonata, but I'm not sitting here being like, oh yeah, and I definitely like missed that shift. Like I don't think I did.
I don't think anyone would ever remember like if you missed a shift.
I mean, probably not. My teacher maybe, but I don't think I did. And I actually remember her after the performance coming up to me and being like, you turned it on. And I was like, yeah. And I think still in that moment, I was like, I don't really know how I did that, but I was able to find something in me to be like, because at the end of the day, I do love performing. Like I wouldn't be here if I didn't love performing. I can be in situations where I'm stressed about performing, but it doesn't mean that I don't want to be doing it. And so I think I just really had to tap into that side of like, this was a voluntary situation that I put myself in. And I also don't want to be miserable for my graduation recital. Like I don't want to be feeling these feelings while I'm doing it.
I feel like it's a really hard thing to get right, because obviously in a way you're living your dream. You're finally doing your, finals recital. For me, that was like such a big thing when I was at high school. I like couldn't wait to get to music college and do my finals recitals. But like when you're in it, you can be so consumed by the situation or like
it's definitely sometimes you see, what's that saying? You see the trees, not the forest, and you just see like that one branch that's like really, really stressing you out. You're not able to process that like. But on the whole, I am better than I was 6 months ago or a year ago, or when I was dreaming of this opportunity.
Yeah, it's made such a difference for me to like focus less on each concert and the goals, but more about how this helps me become like a better cellist overall. So it becomes more about like, obviously I don't always manage, sometimes I do also revert back, focusing a little more on the process. That's
what was your story though? I don't want to let this go. Yeah. What was your story where you had
I have a few.
The reverse happened.
I was doing a concert like with it was a new piece, this kind of like jazzy, also baroque new commission.
Fun.
And I had like a mic on my cello, and there were a lot of effects like delay and a lot of sections where I was playing with myself. And we'd spent like the dress rehearsal the day before until like 11 p.m. fixing the latency, delay, because it was not meant to be a big delay, because I was meant to play with myself. And I got on stage and the delay was just insane. It would be like bum, bum,
like you were literally beats off.
Beats off. And I don't know, I just had to like, I could have panicked.
Yeah.
But I just had to like vibe it out, And I could see like my family came to support. It was so nice, but I could just see them in the audience absolutely fuming because like they had been at the dress rehearsal the day before, like giving feedback. And no, I don't know. But like, when do you think actually setting a boundary and saying like, no, this is maybe not in our best interest, or like this isn't going to yield the result that we want, is a good idea? Because I had an experience where, in hindsight, I think I should have said that, no, this is not gonna be how we want it.
I think I've become a better judge over the years of when I think a situation is likely to devolve. And so I guess like the goal is obviously not being in a performance setting where you're like, I'm not going on stage because X, Y, and Z has happened.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
that's
Like
a good
being able to say
differentiation.
like, even just like trusting your gut and being like, the manager seems kind of slimy to deal with, or I've been hearing that people maybe aren't getting paid fairly or on time, or things like that, where you're like assessing a situation before it gets to the point of you having to refuse to go on stage. Because obviously that's never the goal. And I think, unfortunately, you do generally come off as a diva if you're the person in the moment as something's unfolding that you're like,
Yeah.
you know, it kind of gives the, well, they didn't give me only green M&Ms, so I would. And it's like, that's not usually what's happening, at least in our case. But I think sometimes like you get in too far, and then you're like, I feel really bad pulling out, or it kind of feels like you're breaking your word or something. But that's why also, big fan of contracts over here.
Yeah.
Love a contract.
Communicating, asking all the questions from the get-go. I've also
even if it
learned
seems
that.
ridiculous, specifying that, like, you know, because I've played gigs in so many random settings, and specifying that you need a chair without arms. There's a reason that is in my contract.
Yeah, or
for
like
certain types of gigs.
a floor where you can or like a chair where you can use this bike holder.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think, you know, that's also a situation of, if you are someone who's like maybe a frequent gigging musician, or you're playing in a lot of settings that are not necessarily a picture perfect concert hall, being able to be like, these are things that I need to have in my contract, and you will learn through time. Like, you know, if the weather is above this or below that, I can't play. I often wonder, I've heard some kind of horror stories of people performing at Interlochen. I don't know if you're familiar. It's in the Midwest, an arts camp and also a year-round boarding school, but they do a summer festival. And I'm not going to name names because I don't know if they would want this out there, but I've heard a story of someone having to perform like full concerto, and they were the visiting concert guest artist. Like, they are a big name, and the humidity was like 80%. Their bow was going crazy because the horsehair was just completely stretched out and and all these things. And I often wonder, like, do you wish you had something where you're like, if it's over 80% humidity, I can't play? Yeah. And it was a live on the radio thing, and they did it.
Oh, jeez.
But I'm just sitting here thinking, I would have hated that. So I don't know. And I don't know if maybe for them, like, the adrenaline rush of it all was like, I pulled that off, even though it was less than ideal circumstances. But I guess getting as much information as you can for things ahead of time, and then making sure that something is signed and dotted to the T, is like the best way that you can protect yourself.
So you're saying, like, listening to those red flags early, and then also kind of almost before you agree whether or not to do something, that you kind of ask all the questions.
Yeah.
It's also that thing, and we can probably spend a whole other podcast episode talking about it, but like being labeled as a difficult female musician, not wanting to be labeled as that, and then maybe not feeling brave enough to speak out about it because I didn't want to be labeled as like a difficult woman, but now really wishing that I had, and probably would not care so much now, and like I would rather have a good product or a good experience, or a, you know, I don't know, not hurt
like
myself or something.
Fair working conditions.
You know, not get a lot of pain in my arm because we're doing some like crazy project, because, you know, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Like, but yeah, I don't know. It's a really tough one.
It's a tough one. And I think this is also why it's so important to me to have friends in the industry that I trust, where, you know, if I get a call from a conductor or whatever, I don't think I'm a gossip. I actually really don't think I'm a gossip. I'm not just saying that for the sake of this. I'm not a gossip. But if I'm asking, hey, what's your experience of working with this person? I'm asking for an honest answer. Like, did they treat you fairly? Were you paid on time? Did you feel like it was not only fair, but enjoyable working conditions? Did you feel like you could be a musician, like the musician that you wanted to be under those circumstances? Because I think people have this perception of trying to claw their way to the top and being like, well, I can outlast this other person. I was like, because, you know, we're not, a lot of times, like if we're talking about like classical, like solo performers, whatever, those aren't unions. You only get unions when you're, you know, I've been in a union when I was playing Broadway and things like that.
Yeah,
but
like
those are the
music,
only times that I was getting a union contract for anything. Everything else is like a case by case basis. Well, that's just how they always do it. And you want to do that well because then this person knows this person, blah, blah, blah. But I don't think it's bad to be known as being like, she has standards.
I think that's fair. Like,
she didn't want to perform because the humidity was 80% and her cello was going to explode. Like, I don't think that's a crazy thing to have in a contract. So I think just trying to protect yourself before it goes too far.
The more detailed, the better.
Again, you can look back and be like, and I learned from that.
Oh, yes.
And that's what I don't want to have happen again. Which is, again, why we're trying to do this podcast, because we're trying to show that you don't have to suffer before it gets good.
So you can learn from my mistakes.
Our mistakes, plural.
But yeah, I think that's kind of rounds off today's episode nicely. I'm
glad we had this chat. That felt very therapeutic on a few different levels.
Oh, thank you, and for all your thoughts as well.
As well.
If you have any questions, any experiences you also have had that you'd like to share, or just like some other topics you'd like us to go into, you can either send us a DM on Instagram, Notes from Backstage Podcast, or you can send us an email at notesfrombackstagepodcast@gmail.com. We'd really love to hear from you.
Sounds good. Bye.
See you next week.